It is now in order to consider Amendment Number 21, printed in House Report 114-790. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Connecticut seek recognition?
Mr. Chair, I rise and seek recognition in support of my amendment.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment Number 21, printed in House Report Number 114-790, offered by Ms. Esty of Connecticut.
Pursuant to House Resolution 892, the gentlelady from Connecticut, Mrs. Esty, and a member opposed, each will control 5 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentlelady from Connecticut.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of my amendment to the Water Resources Development Act, which would require the Secretary of the Army Corps to implement a corrosion prevention strategy for our nation's water infrastructure. Preventing corrosion is a bipartisan issue and affects every state, district, and local community. In Connecticut and across the country, corrosion shortens the lifespan of our critical water systems, harms the environment, and endangers public health and safety. Many of our nation's water systems are over 100 years old. What's more, according to a study conducted by the Federal Highway Administration in 2002, the corrosion of water and sewer systems across the United States costs the American taxpayers nearly $36 billion a year, a number that has only increased in the ensuing 14 years. By implementing strategies to prevent corrosion, we can extend the lifespan of these water projects, save money, and ensure that we have continued access to safe drinking water for years to come. Surely we can all agree that preventing corrosion, by doing so, we are being responsible stewards of taxpayer dollars, as well as protecting citizens' health and safety. So let's be clear, this is not a substitute for the serious conversation that this country needs to be having on updating and bringing into the 21st century our roads, bridges, highways, and sewer systems and water systems. But we do need to work towards extending the lifespan of current federal infrastructure. And we need to work hard on that today. Today, we have the opportunity to engage in a bipartisan effort on corrosion prevention, something that will be an important first step to extend the lifespan and the safety of these systems. It's the sensible thing to do. When corrosion control technologies are properly installed and maintained, corrosion is largely preventable. It's inexpensive and it saves lives. So again, I urge my colleagues to support this amendment, and with that, I yield back the balance. I reserve the balance of my time.
The gentlelady reserves. Does any member wish to speak in opposition?
I rise in opposition to claim the time, although I do not oppose the amendment.
Without objection, the gentleman is recognized.
I yield the gentleman 1 minute. 1.5.
Give me a shirt.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And a special thank you to my co-sponsor, co-chair of the House Corrosion Caucus, Congresswoman Esty, for introducing this amendment that will help the taxpayers protect America's aging infrastructure. Corrosion in our nation's infrastructure reduces the lifespan of our investments, costs our taxpayers billions of dollars, threatens our environment, and endangers our public safety. If left unchecked, corrosion affects many sectors of our economy, including defense projects, energy development, ports, water infrastructure, utilities, roads, rails, bridges, and other critical American assets. The good news is that corrosion is an issue that can be tackled to extend the life and value of our federal investments. When properly maintained, corrosion is largely preventable. I've dealt with corrosion my whole adult life. Serving our Navy for 9 years, I've seen young sailors fighting corrosion on our ships with a paint scraper, a paintbrush, and a bucket of gray paint. The glory of the so-called paint and chip detail. And working for the Houston region, I know how corrosion can impact our investment in our ports and waterways. Investing in corrosion prevention now will save the taxpayers billions down the road. If my colleagues want to learn more about corrosion prevention, come to Houston, Texas, headquarters of NACE, National Association of Corrosion Engineers International. This amendment would simply require the Army Corps to submit a report on corrosion prevention activities for our nation's infrastructure, including water and sewer systems. I urge my colleagues to support this bipartisan common sense amendment, and I yield back my time to the gentlelady from Connecticut.
The gentleman yields. Gentleman reserve.
I do not reserve. I just want to say if Connecticut and Texas can agree on this, then Congress ought to be able to agree on this. So I yield back the time.
The gentleman yields. The gentlelady from Connecticut is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank my friend and colleague and the co-chair of the Corrosion Prevention Caucus. I am a Navy daughter and the daughter and granddaughter of civil engineers, so believe me, I've learned a lot about corrosion and corrosion prevention in my life. And again, this is the sort of bipartisan fix we need to be engaged in this body. I want to thank my good friend, Mr. Olson, my good friend, the chairman, Mr. Schuster, and with that, urge all our colleagues to support this common sense amendment. And with that, I yield back.
The gentlelady yields. The question is on the amendment offered by the gentlelady from Connecticut. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say no. In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it. The amendment is agreed to.